Andrew, it's been a while. It's been a while for this. The work has not slowed down. The work has not stopped by any means, but the conversations that we've had kind of slowed down. I'm really interested to listen to the conversation that we have today, because I listened to the conversations that we had a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I think there's so much growth that happened in both of our lives, but the growth in the lives of the athletes that we work with as well have really transformed and shaped. And so I'm really excited to get back doing this with you again.
Same. I feel good.
You feel good about it?
I feel good about it.
So some updates on Andrew Rohrbach here. He's a certified mental performance coach working in a Fortune 500 company as a mental performance coach for some of the highest level executives in the world. And he is also helping athletes of all levels with their mental performance as well. This guy's working 14, 15 hours a day, nonstop grinding and serving others. So I'm excited to pick your brain on some concepts today.
You know, it's so funny. You just remind me of when you would do the summer video and you were like, oh, this guy played for the Rockies, threw 120 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I just felt like you just totally pumped me up there. And
gotta pump you up, man.
Maybe some of it's true, but definitely I love a Tommy pep talk.
Yeah, man. You gotta see yourself for what you are. And that's the way I see you. So hopefully you see yourself that way too.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And I'm just excited to be in this space again. I feel like we always have like really good conversations, and hopefully the viewers get something out of it. But more importantly, I just love picking your brain.
Yeah, it would be great. So this past summer, we filmed a documentary together, and with you, me, and Jagger, and we mentored 10 young athletes, guys, high school players becoming college players, and high school guys becoming professionals. And it was really cool to be able to film that and have the conversations, have the interviews, and most importantly, see the development in the young guys. What I want to start talking about today is the foundation that those players laid over the summer and the diligence behind the work, 6 days a week, 4 hours a day. So, you know, they're getting that workload for 10 straight weeks. Now, watching those players grow and develop throughout the fall, and now we're here in the early spring, seeing how the work that they put in back in the fall and the summer, how that's reaping rewards for them come the springtime. And I think that that's something just really, really cool to think about.
It's amazing when you get your environment right. That's the thing that comes up for me is these kids came in here and trained all summer and really they just developed a brotherhood, right? With people that are doing the same thing, trying to go to the same destination and showing up with consistency. And I think a lot of that is the foundation you're talking about, is when you get your environment right with the people that have like-minded thought processes like you do, a lot of amazing stuff can happen. You know, I think like a lot of psychological research suggests that is how can you find the people that are on the same path as you? It's going to make your fears around pushing yourself, not less, but more manageable. It's probably the word I would use. So I think it was really fun. I appreciate you having me in there. I mean, I was working mental skills with the kids and it was just fun. You know, I remember being that age and I remember being so like terrified of the future. Yeah. And I think the foundation and the environment that you set here at Costello Coaching is second to none. I mean, you really breed not only confidence in these kids, but you create the structure for them to be confident and to push themselves. So,
yeah, I think that, you know, setting up the environment's interesting because I was out traveling, watching a college baseball series this past weekend, and I noticed that, you know, this was a high academic school that I was watching, and it seemed like a couple players were fully bought in on competing, and it seemed like a couple players were doing it for fun, which is perfectly fine, and they have bigger aspirations and bigger dreams, and maybe baseball isn't their priority. So it's so interesting to witness how certain people have such high goals and aspirations for a sport, but when they're mixed, with people that don't have high aspirations for that specific sport, or opportunity, it's tough to stay focused towards your dream, but if you're around people that are fully bought in on that same dream, how much easier it is to stay committed to it. Because as a young guy, I mean, you could speak to this more, but I really witnessed that when I turned 25, 26 years old, that frontal lobe is starting to close up. And I'm not as easily influenced as I was, but the environment that these kids are in is so influential on the direction that they kind of take their life. And when you have people to train with that are bought in and focused on the same dreams and aspirations that you have, it can almost 5x your returns on the work that you're putting in, because you're competing against someone who has those same dreams and aspirations. So I think when they say like, choose your friends and you'll choose your future type of thing, or that'll create your future. I think it's so accurate for athletes to be highly concentrated on who they're spending their time with. And I think Jagger does an incredible job in here of making sure that the right kids are in the building. Like, you got to help these guys that are halfway in get fully in if they're truly committed to it. But also, you can't have a halfway guy in influencing someone who's 90% in. You want that guy who's 90% in to shift to 100 and 110% all in on what they're doing, because the results will just compound for that person. So I think that's really important for high school and college guys, if they're listening to this, or parents that are listening to this, that they make sure that they're witnessing who their children are around. Or if you're an athlete, make sure that you're grabbing the guys in the locker room that are fully bought in on the same dreams and vision that you have for yourself, because that will make it so much easier, because it is so hard. So you need friends and companions to work with in order to make that happen.
Yeah, and you also bring up another point of, if I'm going to teach goal setting to some people, right? The thing that I would tell them is like, who's living the life that you want to currently live, or you want to eventually get to, and how did they do that? Right? So you kind of reverse engineer it by having that outcome goal of like, I want to be Shohei Ohtani in the big leagues. Great. What does he do on a day in, day out basis? Mm-hmm. And that helps people kind of narrow in the path that they possibly want to travel on. And then you can ask better questions from there. It's like, okay, this is the path that I have to do. I have to lift this consistently. I have to show up, and I can't just throw the ball, Now I'm like really intentional with every throw, because Shohei Ohtani is working on something every single time he throws, right? And so this is kind of like an interesting thing to think about, is it goes in line with, well, Shohei surrounds himself with the right people, right? It takes a village is like one of the sayings. Yeah.
And two, like, even for more granular example, I'll see this all the time, young pitchers, I know this is getting specific, but young pitchers will want the one mechanical tip or trick that's going to change the trajectory of, they're going to get that mile an hour from that tip or trick. And they'll spend 80 to 90% of their time working on pitching on a mound, or with a pitching coach getting a pitching lesson, and they'll be focused on that specific skill. But then if you look at the best players in the world and you go, like, I've trained plenty of professional pitchers, 90% of the work is away from the mound. So you look at a pro, the best in the world that do it, they spend 90% of the time away from the mound working on things, weight room, arm care, different types of mobility, whatever the protocols and procedures are for those guys. And then they're highly focused on that 10% of their time on the craft of pitching on the mound, where a young kid spends 90% of the time on a mound, And so sometimes they get it backwards like that. But if they have the right mentor, if they're around the right group, and they're like, oh, all these kids that throw hard are spending most of their time in the weight room and running sprints and, working on their arm care, and then they're able to pitch because they've done all this work away from it, it opens up so many opportunities for them. And so that's just kind of what happens in here, is like, these kids get around the right kids, get around the right training protocols, and they're all trained to work that way towards their goal, changing the framework. And I think you're so good at creating frameworks for guys. I think you're so good at, why don't you just look at it this way, and start observing your situation this way. And then if you change the way that they think about it, all of a sudden it helps them change the day-to-day activities that are going to then yield the results for them. And that's what we did this summer.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's totally what we did this summer. And I think also something that's really important is we increase people's self-awareness. You know, when you put them in this environment, there's things that are screaming at them. Like, this is where you compare to other people. This is what your game looks like comparatively to someone else's. And when you do that, you create some sort of self-awareness of, where do I orient myself around others? Where do I have to be? Right? Like, the biggest thing, if you're going to do any sports psychology or mental performance, from my perspective, is increasing your self-awareness. People don't know what they don't know. So you have to like be a mirror for them to help them. And right, in the environment that you're creating here creates that mirror for them to go, this is where I currently am at. Mm-hmm. And you're also building a mindset for them.
What would be some questions that you would ask an athlete to help them create that mirror if they don't have that? If they lack self-awareness, what would be the questions that you would guide an athlete to ask themselves to then grab the awareness about themselves?
I mean, it's subjective, you know, it depends on like the specific kid and what they're looking for, but just asking them where they see themselves at currently is always a good question, because you get their perspective on it. But then there's also, you know, I don't know if there's like specific questions, but asking them different things about their game, where they feel like they line up on some, on whether it's hitting or pitching or in the weight room. It is, most of the time they're just sitting in their head thinking about those things. When they speak it out, it gives them a better idea of, oh, this is actually how I feel about the situation. And then you put them in an environment that further educates that.
What if someone had, you know, the illusion of where they're at? So, you know, they think they're the greatest pitcher in Southern California and they throw 77 miles an hour and they don't have a breaking ball to the zone and they're on the JV team. How do you help someone come to the reality, but also not crush their dreams or the momentum that they create? Because that could be a dangerous guy who thinks that they're really good, you know what I mean? But in reality, they're not that good. But maybe they're working so hard, they think they're that good and they're getting closer to that goal. How do you kind of like grab that line where you say, no, so-and-so, this is where you're really at and you're doing a great job, but this is, how would someone come to that if they didn't have you to talk to them?
Oh, if they didn't have me?
Yeah, because like I could see like a kid like scrolling through Instagram, for example, they get a clip of you saying, you know, start analyzing where you're at, but then they don't have the feedback from someone else to give them the reality, or they just don't believe in their coach. You know, their coach is on them and they're really hard on them, and they are, you know, have that FU mindset to the coach. No, I am that good. I do believe in myself, but in reality, you know, they aren't that good. You know, like how do you work with that? And then vice versa, like the kid who doesn't think he's any good and has the coach, you know, telling him, you can be great. You can be great. Keep working at it. Keep working at it. And they're like, oh, no, I'm not that good, you know, and they're a little passive towards it. I find kids are on both ends of the spectrum. Very few are centered, grounded, saying this is the work that I need to do on a day-to-day basis in order to go where I want to go.
Yeah, well, I mean, you brought up a couple examples. So the first thing is, like, if you don't have someone to help you increase your own self-awareness, the way you can do it is through assessment tools, right? So, like, for example, using your model here is like come in and get an assessment from Tommy to see where you're at physically and where that compares to other people, right? And then from the person who doesn't, you know, has all the tangible tools, but then can't think about things the way they want to think about things, I'd ask them to like really figure out where that voice is coming from, like whose voice is that? Because most often that voice is coming from a previous coach, possibly a parent, maybe some of the peers that are kind of saying negative things to the person. So when you ask them like whose voice is that, putting a name to that voice, most often it kind of helps them go, oh, this is actually not my voice. This is not actually how I feel about myself. I feel about myself this way. So there's like different ways to go about it. I don't know if I really answered your question in the way.
No, you 100% did. I think like grabbing that, whose voice is in my head right now, is a really good question to ask yourself as an athlete. Whose voice is in my head? Is it a previous coach's voice? Is it a parent's voice? Is it my own voice? And grabbing certainty behind that can be a very freeing experience for someone. Because once you grab your own voice, then it becomes your path and it becomes your career and it becomes what you're designing. But a lot of times young kids, it's their parents' voice and they're doing it because their parents told them to do it. Or it's a coach's voice and they're just doing it because a coach told them to do it. And I think that's really good. Simply asking yourself, I think, for self-awareness, like, whose voice is in your head right now? And I mean, that goes for me, it goes for you, it goes for Sam, right? Like, whose voice is in my head right now? And if it's you and you're calling the shots and you're dictating it, I think that's best, you know? Because it becomes your own. You own it. You know, you grab ownership for what the decisions are and what the results are and what the process is.
Yeah, 100%. I also think, too, going back to your example of the kid throwing 77 on JV, you really want to be careful, because if that person really truly believes in it, maybe there's a little distortedness in the reality.
Yeah.
You want to be like cognizant of not like pushing that person into like, no, you're not that person. Right? You want to just give them, that's why I brought up assessment tools, like give them things that are going to give them immediate feedback of what the reality of the situation is, and then gently guide them in the direction of, hey, you're not where you want to be right now. You believe in yourself. You push yourself. This is what this assessment tool is saying. You need to get stronger in these areas. Personality assessment tools, like this is where you line up with other people who are kind of in the same spot as you. And great, let's keep that same mentality, but how can we kind of attack that zone? Because you want to be careful. You don't want to like push anybody down and be like, yeah, you're not this person that you're saying you are.
You're right. And I love the way that we created our assessment, because there's certain data points that are easy to compare yourself to others. So the easiest data point is kids compare themselves in terms of velocity. I throw this hard. And then they see their peer throwing harder, not as hard. They see the big leaguers throwing this and they throw that, and they compare themselves on the velocity metric. Well, it's not fair for a 15 or a 16-year-old to compare themselves to a 25-year-old on TV, right? But that happens all the time. You know, I'll even see it with kids getting recruited in college. They'll go to a college baseball game and say, this guy's throwing 90 out there, and I throw 90. Like, how am I not recruited? And it's like, you're looking at one data point. You know, maybe that guy had a 4.0. Maybe that guy, you know, has the best character on the team. Maybe that guy throws 75% strikes and knows how to pitch to both sides of the plate and has 4 pitches that he can execute. And you're just comparing yourself off one metric. So what I try to do when I assess someone is reverse engineer it to the point where we're going to look at every data point possible in terms of training context and a training framework. So how strong your internal rotation is, how strong your external rotation is, where your grip strength's at, how the anatomy of your shoulder lines up, personality test. Are you willing to put in the work? What's your grit score? You know, just like understanding all of those different things. And then finally getting to the biomechanics of the throw to then say, okay, this is how far off biomechanically you are. And then since I've done it so many times, you can say, all right, well, this is where you are today. This is what you told me your goal is. Based off of my analysis and based off of what I've seen before and who you are and your personality and your data, I'd project you're this far away from your goal. And it would take this much work within that time frame. And that becomes very actionable. You know, it becomes so actionable for them to be able to say, okay, I can live with that. I know if I follow the script, I'll get the result that I want. And that's what I like doing for guys, because most people that go and cook at their house don't have the natural ability to know what the oregano goes with. You know, most people like the recipe. Oh, it's this much of that, and it's this much of that, and it's this much of that. And you'll get a consistent meal. You know, so that's the way I kind of look at it, is like, I look at how they are in the kitchen, I look at the ingredients that they have access to, and then we try to craft the best meal possible for them and give them a reality point of like, hey, like, it might be a great option. I evaluate you in this amount of time. You're a junior in high school. This is where you're at. It's probably like looking to go at 19 years old. You're probably going to be at the D2, D3, maybe lower level D1 potential. And then that kind of helps them, okay, that's where I'm at right now. What do I have to do in order to change those things? Or what do I have to do to meet those expectations? And So I help them get that alignment. But if they don't have the voice inside them, then it's just my voice telling them too. And that's not the right way to go about it. So I think to get a little bit more focus back on the players that we can refer to, they all are completely comfortable with us talking about them. We're very close to all of them. What player comes to the top of your mind for someone who grabs some self-awareness and grabs some maybe some habits and routines that completely transform themselves? I mean, we're lucky because we could predict it during the summertime, but now, 7 months later, 8 months later, there's some data behind who really changed. I think they all changed for the better, but who comes to the top of your mind of someone who grabbed that?
Yeah, I think, keeping confidentiality at the forefront of this, because I think they're fine if we talk about it. There's two players that come to mind for me. The first one's Garrett Morrell. Garrett came in during the summer, and I wasn't at the beginning of summer, but I came in towards the middle and really was just working his butt off. Just was dealing with a lot of different things, trying to get himself back to where he wanted to be. And I think, he had some tough days in here. He had some good days. He had some tough days. But the thing is, he kept showing up. Like, even if he had a tough day, that some people would never even come back here, right? And it's a testament to like who he is as a person. And he came in after those tough days and really pushed himself. And I think that's why you see where he's at right now. At I forget what's the junior college he's at. It's like Golden West.
Yeah,
he's at Golden West. But he's shooting up the draft boards, and he's now committed to NC State. So he's one that man, within a couple months, 6 months, really stepped into himself. Right. And then the other one is Gavin.
Yeah.
Gavin Geyer.
Yeah. Pitcher bias over here.
It's a little pitcher bias, yeah, unfortunately. But Gavin, I thought, just an amazing personality, just an amazing kid, just lights up a room when he's in it. And I think he came in, and you would understand his metrics from the data perspectives of in the gym more than I would. But from a mental, emotional perspective, we created some structure that I think he possibly still utilizes today while he's at Oaks Christian, just dominating over there. And I think it's just a testament to the guys that are willing to go through the tough things and just continue to keep fighting. You talk about grit earlier, or mental toughness, whatever you want to call it. Those two just are the one. Everybody progressed. I just think from a pitcher bias perspective and I felt like I related to those two, not the most, but just I had more instances that make me think about it right now. Those are the two that come up for me. What about you?
Yeah, when you talk about environment in the beginning of the conversation, I think of Gavin, but more importantly, I actually think of Colton. Colton, who has the experience of being around his brother, first round draft pick. He is the UCLA commit. He is he is kind of the big dog in the camp and the pitcher group with all this potential in the world. He's for sure a front runner. He was always the first one to support Gavin in those hard times, first one to really support him and, put his hand on his back and let him know that he's got it. Because my whole thing with Gavin was the camp was going to set up for what I could not replicate for him in terms of training. The camp's set up for iron sharpens iron. You're going to have to face Quentin Young. You're going to have to face Isaiah Hearn. You're going to have to face Robbie Morgan. You're going to have to face these guys, Ethan Price, and get grindy with them. This is not easy. This is a kid who never even pitched at the JV level going up against, top draft picks and having to get them out. And we're putting pressure on him. The expectation is you get these guys out. It's not that you're just up there on the mound and they're hitting the ball off you. Our expectation is that you're getting them out. And that environment is what changed him. And now he's 7 months later dominating the varsity level, throwing velocities he could have never imagined because he did the base level work, which is the work. The one that comes to mind for me, though, another pitcher, but I think we should just do pitchers then hitters, but is Chase. Chase, I told him in the beginning of the summer that you're going to have to spend so much time under tension with weight training and weightlifting and getting bigger, getting stronger. And some guys, it takes longer, adaptation. He did it. He put in the work over the summer, but man, this fall, he didn't miss a beat. If it was a 6 a.m. lift this fall, he was here. If it was a 5 p.m. lift, he was here. He never missed. It was 5 days a week. He stayed on that schedule. And now it's like, oh man, this is going to be really exciting to watch this season. He transferred, so he has to sit out. So he'll be pitching here soon. But what a transformation I witnessed with him on the physical side. Because I think that's a human that actually is so in tune. I think his emotional IQ is so high. So I know for a fact, like, anyone's going to have struggles in baseball, so they're going to need support mentally. But I think he's one of the strongest kids mentally. He's dealt with adversity. It doesn't really bother him on the outside. He knows how to pick back up and kind of attack. But, we're all challenged somewhere, and his was just physical, but he did the work, and it literally changed, and the velocity's changed, and the opportunity is going to change for him this summer. And he's just a junior. So it was so cool that someone from transitioning from sophomore to junior year said, no, I'm going to dedicate 8 diligent months to my body. Like, I'm going to dedicate 8 diligent months to my body. And he did. And it's so cool to see that. So that's because that's what it's about. You know what I mean? Like, laying the foundation, watching them build off that foundation, and then seeing them reap the rewards here in the spring.
Yeah. I think I've known Chase for a while, and Chase is just a good kid, and I think he knows where he wants to be. I think he's got a pretty clear vision of it, and so it's no surprise to see him where he's at with what you're saying. The person that comes out for hitting for me is Ethan Price. I think Ethan was in a spot too of trying to figure out where he wanted to go in college, and once he made that choice, he's constantly checked in with me, picking my brain on mental, emotional stuff. And I think he just is asking better questions now. And that's part of increasing self-awareness. You can ask better questions once you have awareness of where you currently stand and where you want to be and what you need to do to get there. So
yeah, I think it's important too for the people listening to the conversation. Like, we have so much context on each of these kids. But if you could kind of paint a picture for someone listening, trying to learn who is Ethan Price in terms of a type of player. And then when you say oh, I saw this hitter improve, if someone is that kid that's a junior, that's a great athlete, that isn't quite sure where he's going to go collegiately, but knows that he's going to be a Division I player, what were those steps that he took in order to have the ability to ask better questions?
Yeah, I think he was someone that he's very physically gifted. He's a freak of nature in the gym and on the field. So he never had a question on that, I don't think. It was more, how do I show up my best self more consistently? And I think that was a question once we started doing the mental emotional work, he was able to tap into, how do I become the best version of me, and what does that look like? Because one of the questions I ask people is, in that first intake session, the best version of yourself, Tommy, what does that look like? What does that feel like? And most people sit for a second and go, I'm not entirely sure how to answer this question. So what does it look like? What does it feel like? All right, it kind of looks like this. I kind of feel this certain way. Okay. So you're kind of just giving them, you're not giving them any answers, but you're giving them some sort of vision of where they want to travel to, and then equipping them with tools. So once Ethan was able to ask that question to himself of, the best version of me looks like this, then it was just about, okay, what tools do you want to do to get yourself in that premier performance mindset? Right? Each person has it differently. You competed differently than I competed. Right? For me, I love to be as calm as I possibly can be. I'd love to just roll out on a Friday night at Long Beach State and pretending like I'm not even pitching in the game. That's how I dealt with the anxiety, was getting myself so calm so that the reality of the situation didn't take me mentally. And so I understood that and equipped myself with the tools. And Ethan, I think, is starting to do that a little bit more efficiently. But to answer your question, he first had to be in here, see where he stacked up against other people, and then start asking himself, where's the lowest hanging fruit for me? And I think for him, he was trying to just figure that out. And I think we've worked through some of the stuff for him.
One of the funniest stories that I think of this summer in regards to Ethan was we were working out on the 4th of July, and we all had our shirts off, and it was just a big 4th of July pump, and everyone was going to go to the beach after. And my dad came in for the lift. He was working out with the boys, and it was cool because they were all a little on edge. Big Tom, was in there, and they were kind of all looking at him, and he was throwing around just as much weight as all of them. They're like, "What? This guy's 60? What the heck?" And my dad walks over to the side, and Ethan's doing pull-ups, and he goes, "Where the hell is that kid going? That kid's a freaking beast." And I was like, "Yeah, Ethan, he's unbelievable. Love him. He's the best. Just a little confidence right now. Like he's just working on a little bit of his confidence." And my dad looked at me sideways. "Confidence? You ever tell that kid to look in a freaking mirror?" and so he walks. I just started dying laughing, and he walked over to him, and he goes, "Tom," he said, "you're working on confidence a little bit." And he's like, "Yes, sir. Just trying to stay consistent with my confidence at the plate. I'm going to need you to do yourself a favor and just look in the mirror real quick." And he goes, "You shouldn't lack any confidence, buddy." And he just started laughing. And I think there was like a little change in his face, and like so simply said, but so true. Like look in the mirror if you're looking for confidence, if you're someone that's looking for confidence, what you've done in the past is your proof of your confidence. And if you haven't done anything that's that significant to you, well, then look at the work that you're doing, and then that's your proof of concept for your confidence, And then that can be a strong tell. If you're not doing the work, do the work, and you'll gain the confidence. And so it's not something that we just have or something that we're just born with, but it's a consistent question parents always ask about. And I'm sure it's the lead-in of probably 95% of your conversations is, "Yeah, I'm just struggling with my confidence right now."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I would only imagine that a mental performance conversation starts with that,
Yeah, it doesn't always start with that, but that's always something that comes up, right? And you hit on a good point. Confidence, and this is not my words, but there's someone, I can't think of the guy's name right now, but he always says confidence needs evidence. And the evidence, you have to stack the evidence to prove confidence. Confidence is not just going to be there by screaming affirmations in the mirror. And I think that's another guy. I can't remember his name you know who I'm talking about.
Oh, Hermosi.
Yeah. Confidence doesn't come from screaming affirmations in the mirror. It's like, yeah, true. You just need to put the work in. But then there's also people who put the work in and don't have confidence.
Like an Ethan.
Like possibly an Ethan, right?
But then he understood, he shifted the framework for being actually accountable for, this is the work that I'm putting in. These are the changes that I've made. And then you see that growth.
Yeah. And it's also too, like most people who put the work in are physically talented, have all the things in the entire world. Most often they're like perfectionists, right? And I was a perfectionist, but how I would teach that is to help equip them with empathy tools. How can you simplify this? Because most often you're trying to climb the mountain while you're at the base just because you have so much belief in yourself and you have all the tangible tools to get up the mountain as quick as possible. It's like, yeah, true. But how can you calm it, simplify it a little bit more, give yourself a little bit more empathy, lower your expectations in the right way? Having high expectations is great, but when they're overfilling the cup, and it's causing you to regress, how can you give yourself some back those expectations and lowering them in the right direction? So that comes through specific conversations and different specifics for that person. But confidence needs evidence. And if you are someone who is struggling with, giving yourself the empathy, it challenge you to ask yourself the right question of how can I lower my expectations in a healthy way here.
That's cool. What are some of the questions that you ask yourself? Because I know that you are a person, which is, I think, I respect you for so many reasons, but one of the reasons that I respect you almost the most is you truly practice what you preach. And I know that you're committed to your processes, and you use environment to your advantage, you use friends to your advantage, but also you have a lot of that discipline to yourself to open up that journal, and that's the mechanism in which you like to work through. What are some of the questions that you consistently ask yourself that either bring you confidence or bring you more center so that when you show up in a highly stressful job and you have high expectations, not only for yourself, but within your career, what are some of those things that you're pulling on and asking yourself?
Yeah, I am very much a perfectionist, very much. And I've had to learn to loosen the collar I put myself on. And some of the questions I ask myself, more importantly, is what is my intention for today? And for me, that is something that helps me have a filter that I push everything through. So for today, my intention was to show up. I have a little bit of a cough. I don't feel sick, but I'm not feeling 100%. So my intention is to show up, and I'm going to gauge everything based off of that I showed up and I did the best I could do, right? I also
like that's kind of like your. I like that real quick. Like I want to expand on that slightly. It's like that's your scoreboard for the day. You know, like you can kind of reference back to that and say, okay, I've done really well today because, you know, I showed up, and that's what I set the intention for. It wasn't that I'm gonna, you know, do all these things perfect, or I'm gonna train really hard, or I'm gonna do these things. It was like show up, and that can help build momentum.
Yeah, and that also goes back to self-awareness. You know, when I woke up this morning, I had the cough. You know, and to mental toughness, like I'm not giving myself an excuse because I have a cough and I feel a little under the weather, right? It's more just I have awareness as this is where my body's currently operating. What can I do to maximize what I have? And that's where I'm asking myself, okay, today is a show up day. How can I just show up? And I had so many starts where it was like, man, my arm does not feel good. My body feels terrible. What do I got to go out there, and no matter how my body's feeling, today's my intention is to show up. And most often, that helps me exceed the expectations, right? Rather than going, I feel terrible, I don't feel 100%, but I have to throw a no-hitter today or else I'm not going to get drafted. I'm going to play terrible.
So many guys do that, though, to themselves.
Yeah.
They don't feel perfect, and then they jeopardize the whole thing.
Yeah.
When in reality, no one feels perfect all the time.
It's working with what you got, right? And having that self-awareness of showing up with that way.
So I cut you off. What was the second thing you asked yourself?
The
first one was
thing,
about intention.
Yeah, the second thing, and this is less of a thing I ask myself, but something I keep in mind for me is how do I create a system within the system that I'm in? And for me, whether that's working at an organization or doing mental emotional training stuff here with individual clients, whatever it is, that's the system that I'm currently in, right? And the demands that system's going to have on me, I know because I've been in it enough, right? Being part of an organization, being part of a high school baseball team with my coach's expectations, that's the system I'm in. And understanding how that system values me and how it doesn't value me. The things that it values, no problem. I don't really have to think about those anymore. I already know them. The things that don't value me, I have to create a better system within myself to counteract those. So for example, when I was with the Rockies, they believed in different levels of throwing program, different styles of throwing program, different ways of PT. It was just a system that I was not used to. And so what I did was when I was with them, I realized I wasn't getting the care. I wasn't getting the value that I thought I needed to be getting. So I went out and got it for myself. Right? I went to TB12, trained with Tom Brady and his people, and took those. So I was equipping myself with the system that I have so that I have tools in my tool bag that I can take wherever I go. And so when I'm waking up in the morning, not only am I setting the intention for the day, but I am reminding myself of the system I'm about to walk into and how do I need to equip myself to be prepared for that system. So for me, most often, because I'm in meetings all day and coaching people pretty consistently, I'm giving a lot of my energy away. So part of my system is taking energy from me, and the system I have to create for myself is how do I give energy to me? So that's where routines and habits become really paramount for me. Is the beginning portion of the day is journaling, whether I'm running, I'm lifting, I'm making sure that I'm doing everything I can for myself so that I feel prepared for that environment that I'm about to go into that's going to take from me.
That's really good stuff. I like that a lot. You're setting the intention and then becoming aware of the system that you're entering, what is that system doing for me? What is that system taking from me? Acknowledge what's being taken from me, but then also give back to what I need. What am I most in need of here? And then I'm going to feed that. And I think that's important for anybody in any profession, but especially a ball player, because they all are entering systems. They have a system when they walk in here, but also when they walk into their individual team environments. And what you'll notice a lot of times is like guys grab a lot of energy from being in here. And so the high school players consistently show up because they live here. And what ends up happening is the pro guys come back after 8 months of kind of being depleted from their system. And they're almost like super thirsty at the drinking fountain when they first come back. They just want to be in here all the time. They want to talk. They grab their energy and they kind of like grab their resources and all that they have in their energy to go back to spring training. And they know that they're going to be exhausted physically, mentally, emotionally, and that they're in for the long haul. And then they get a reset. And that's kind of the life of a professional baseball player. It's micro at the high school level because they'll go and have their little dramas that every team has and every school has. They'll bring it back into here. They'll kind of regroup. And then the college player is somewhere in between. The college player gets to come back over the winter. Then they go off in the spring. Then they come back a little bit before summer ball. Then they go get pulled into summer ball. Then they come back a little bit after summer ball. Then they come home for Thanksgiving. And they're at this, and that's the arc of the maturity. And I think for you, being a very mature, not complete, but very mature human, is you begin to self-identify where I'm at right now, where am I at right now, and then what am I going into, and what is that going to pull from me? So I think that's a really good place to finish this conversation, and we'll pick back up at it next time.
Awesome.